Hey, everybody. Guess what? It's Friday, June 26th, and you are live on Shally's Alley. And with me today, I have a very special guest, another one from on the other side of the pond, although not as far as the last guest. Matt Alder has interviewed well over 800 guests about the future of talent acquisition, and his latest solo episode argues that recruiting hasn't fundamentally changed in 200 years. I would argue that recruiting is older than that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and AI isn't just automation. It's a fork in the road after 200 years of same. And also that most TA teams are about to find out which direction they chose. So, Matt, welcome to the alley.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's always brilliant to be a guest on someone's show rather than just asking the questions. So I appreciate it.
Am I right about the 800 episodes, or is it more?
It's 803 now. So
800. So
yeah.
Consider this your official warning. I'm coming after you. I'm gonna beat you. No, I can't. There's no way. I have thought 370 episodes. So is it weekly?
It's twice a week.
Okay. So technically, you've been doing this for about 4 years.
It's 11 years. I did it. When I
first
started doing it, I did 2 episodes a month, and then it's kind of gradually sort of ramped up.
And then you ramped it up to 2 a week.
Yeah, now it's 2 a week. Yeah.
I've been doing Fridays now for, I want to say, about 6 years. And it's not every Friday. I will skip because this is live. There's no pre-recording, so I don't pre-record and then broadcast. I only skip if it's like a significant holiday, and it's that day off for most people. So I'll skip it, but I'll usually like play back an old episode. So, but I'm gonna be nipping at your heels. I don't think there's a lot of other people out there that do what we do that have in the hundreds of episodes that are still doing it.
It's a lot. It's a big commitment to keep doing it. It's an interesting. I mean, I love doing it, which is why I keep doing it, and people listen to it, which is also important.
Right? Isn't that weird though? They come up to you at a conference and they go, "Hey, I saw your episode," and I'm like, "Wow, I didn't think anybody saw these." Like, really? You must be the only one. And then somebody else will be like, "Oh no, I was on that episode too." Like, oh, okay, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
so I love that.
I do a lot that's just audio only. I do video, but not as much video. And people tend to recognize my voice before they recognize me, which is always. So
yeah, well, I mean, you definitely have the voice. I mean, people say they have a voice for radio. I have a voice for print. Unfortunately, not the best voice. I have a face for radio. But a voice for print. Anyways, so quick question, just kind of get things going. You've interviewed everybody else about AI. What is the question that you wish someone asked you about AI?
That is a good question. That's you got me off guard straight away.
Because you're used to asking people, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm really used to asking people about it. I think it's what's really important with it, because I think there's so much like noise around it. There are so many occasions where people sort of dive into details that don't really matter, and it's kind of what actually is important about it. What should we be paying attention to?
What truly matters.
Okay,
absolutely. So what is it? So Matt, what is important about it? What truly matters?
I think what truly matters. I think going back to your introduction about my recruiting is 200 years old story. I mean, it was an example from 200 years ago. You're absolutely right. A lot of the things that we do in recruiting are much older than that.
I mean, we used to do fire signals, send troops, we're being invaded. So that was like recruiting 101,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first sort of printed job ad was 1687 or something like that. So we're talking about a really long time.
And before that, it was the town crier. The baker is hiring. The baker is hiring.
And it's funny because, humans don't actually change that much. So it does actually make sense that a lot of the things that we do, we still do. But obviously technology has massively changed. I think the AI thing is interesting because it moves so fast and there's so much conversation around it and people feel they have to be talking about it. And people are getting AI to represent them to talk about it. it's just kind of what really, what's kind of really important here. And I think, from our perspective, it's just like, how can it make recruiting better? And to me, that's like better for everyone. So that's better for the employer, better for the recruiter, better for the hirer,
Oh, actually, that makes sense.
and better for the candidate.
Right.
And I
Not just
think,
better for people doing the job.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you wrote that the problem with AI isn't that we're going to eliminate jobs, but that we're doing jobs that we shouldn't even be doing in the first place. So what do you mean by that? What is the job that recruiters shouldn't be doing?
So I think that there's a lot of, it's going back to things staying the same for a really long time. I think that a lot of the bits and pieces around recruiting are responses to some of the restrictions that we've had. So a resume can only be a certain length, and a recruiter can only read a certain amount of resumes.
And there's laws about disposition and process and workflow and reporting, and you're required to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also, there's only a certain amount of time that people can be interviewed, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of the processes to deal with these kind of restrictions. Now, if we move into a world where actually, a candidate could have as much information as they wanted in their job application, and AI could help read and interpret that. And I think it just makes things very, very different. And I think that's the level of thinking that we kind of need to get to. It's like, if we have these new tools, these new ways of working, the machines that can do things that we couldn't really imagine were going to be possible a few years ago, then that impacts the way recruiting works, because recruiting's been set up to deal with the limitations of what humans can do, or what they can do in the context of their job. So I think that's what I mean. That's what I mean by that. I think it's
there's just stuff that we have to do, but it's kind of a waste of time, really.
Yeah, but also I think it's a question of asking questions about why we do things. So recruiting works this way. Why does it work this way? Why do we use resumes? Do we need a resume for that job? Do we need to interview people for that job? And the answer might be yes. But also it might be no, actually, just it's not the most efficient way to do it. We could do it a different way now that if we have the capability to do it. And I think that we're all kind of so stuck in our ways of thinking about how recruitment and hiring works. I think this is the opportunity to ask questions about it that we've maybe not asked before, to unlock some some different ways of doing it.
So let's start with one thing. Give me one specific recruiting activity that you would rip out, and it doesn't matter if it's something that we've been forced to do, because we're talking about, that's kind of the idea, right? So what would be the one thing that you would just rip out that recruiters should just stop doing permanently, get rid of it?
Yeah. So the bigger picture would be resumes, because
eliminate resumes.
Eliminate resumes, because I think that what's going on with candidates and AI at the moment is really showing up their shortcomings in the fact that people can just create resumes that are perfect for the job using AI. They all look the same, and it really shows up the limitations of it. More than that, I think that what's really interesting is, I think it's about thinking about what can a machine do better than a human. But then the second stage of it is like, even if a machine could do it better, what is it still essential for a human to do? Because recruiting is human. So that's the thing. And I think that one of the interesting areas is screening resumes or applications, because we're at this stage at the moment for lots of employers are getting way too many people. They're getting more people applying than they can deal with the amount of the amount of applications and resumes that they need to read. So a lot of them just aren't being read. Things are being shut before.
Yeah, actually, quite frankly, that was happening before. So
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So,
but buddy, I gotta push back on something here. You just stepped on a huge landmine here. I don't know if you realize this, but you just said that the one thing you would rip out is resumes, and then you said that the one thing AI should do is screen resumes.
No, exactly.
Exists because you just ripped them out.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But I was coming up with two things. I was like, if we have to keep resumes, then this.
If we have to keep resumes, then okay.
Then this. That was the bit I just missed out. I wasn't deliberately trying to contradict myself.
No, I was just like, well, I'd love to rip out resumes, but then why are we going to screen them? Would you be surprised if I told you that what I do now, because I still do this job for a living, is I don't actually use resumes? Would you be shocked if I told you that?
Wouldn't surprise me at all, because I'm seeing that happening more and more.
I don't use them. I don't look at resumes. They're part of the application file, but when an inbound applicant provides a resume, we have it in the system. But if I'm going out and sourcing, which is what I do, and finding people, I don't look for resumes anymore. I'm looking for signals and intent and I'm projecting competencies and capabilities. And then I put together a dossier on that. And my dossier is a one page. It's a when I submit candidates, I hate that word. Because like you're submitting them. I submit them for your approval, Your Highness. But when I send candidates to the hiring manager, it's a dossier with a maximum of 20 pages, 1 page per person. And the top page is an index with the rubric and the scoring, and then every candidate gets a page. And they click yes or no on each one of those, forward or not forward. And they're not resume. There is a link to their LinkedIn profile. There's a link to their online bio or attached resume, but it's not the resume.
Absolutely. And imagine if you could do that in volume hiring at scale. Automatically have that kind of level of
don't you think that volume hiring, especially frontline workers, should really not even use a resume? Because like my daughter, she's 18 and she's applying for jobs, and she's like, everywhere I go, they ask me for a resume. Help me write a resume. And what's on her resume? Worked at Pizza Hut for a year, worked at a pet shop for a year. Like, what were the bullet points? Like, I showed up to work every day, and like that was it. So what is really in that resume that somebody wants to see?
Absolutely. And I'll give you a really good example. I literally just got off a podcast interview with someone. So I'm not going to say what the company is because I haven't published it yet and all this sort of
but it's about resumes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, it's about, so they have a kind of a conversational, they're frontline hiring. They have a conversational apply process.
Got it.
And they kind of eliminated resumes altogether. So it's kind of like conversational screening. Then you go on to the hiring manager.
Piecing the resume together.
Which is great. Now, what's interesting is they still had a huge amount of people ghosting their sorry, it wasn't a hiring manager, it was a recruiter interview, ghosting the recruiter interviews.
Right. Okay.
So they put a little bit of friction back in. So not a resume, but they put like a small kind of application, like give us this lens, everything stayed the same, but they just kind of moved the bottleneck to somewhere else. And, they're now experimenting with using recruiters making calls to people who are stuck in that area. So it's interesting that obviously technology is enabling, AI is enabling some of this, but they're still experimenting with where do we put the friction back? Where do we put the human recruiter to really make it work? And I think that's really interesting. And that's really the kind of way to think about this rather than technology is replacing this and we're getting rid of this. It's like, well, actually, a lot of this also depends on the candidates, on what the candidates want. And, I think that's kind of important if you want to hire people.
It's the whole process. So, I mean, if you go back and think about, the days of old when we really started to automate the industrial revolution, if you will, and started automating things. Automation came around for several reasons. There wasn't like there was one big question that automation solved. We're talking about, again, the industrial revolution. So you started putting in, machines, not robots, but machines that do repetitive work for a couple of reasons. There was cost cutting because the cost of labor went up. And part of the reason why the cost of labor went up is because people didn't want to get, injured on the job. So safety became an issue. So the jobs became safer because fewer accidents, because the machines were doing the dangerous bits of hammering and pouring things that are hot and burning. And, so it was safer. So people ended up doing other more valuable jobs and moving in. So it was like multiple things. It wasn't just we're going to automate because of cost or we're going to automate because of efficiency. It was like safety. It was quality control, making sure that the machine does it the same way. And you could always count on it hammering at the right, power or precise location. So right now we're going through that kind of phase where we're trying to figure out where the automation actually is, what is the equivalent of hammering a nail in our business? So yeah. And that brings me to my next question for you is, you've developed a framework for AI readiness. And a lot of TA leaders, especially leaders I talk to, think that AI readiness means just buying software, which it doesn't. So what does AI readiness actually mean? And I don't mean just like, we're ready for AI, let's push the button and buy the robot that we just saw advertised on, on the Roku TV. What does it really mean?
It really means, how do you get true value out of this tool? how do you get the most value out of it? How do you use AI to make recruiting better, to drive more value for your business, to to achieve those kind of objectives? And this isn't something I made up. I got it from one of the things with having so many TA leaders that I've interviewed on the podcast, is I can now point AI at all of the transcripts and actually pull out patterns and things like that. So this has come from a lot of interviews that I've done with people who are doing this kind of thing. And there's sort of 5 bits to this, really. I think the first one is what we've been talking about, which is process design. So, rather than just putting AI tools in your process, which may not work anyway, AI is not going to fix it. It's just going to make it not work quicker and but potentially make it worse. So, thinking about the process and what's possible, very much what we've been talking about, that's a key part of it. So, I think that's the first thing to think about. Then there's the human AI balance. Where does human judgment really need to sit within this? And, I think that's a decision that depends on the employer. It depends on the type of people that they're hiring. There's a huge, it's very difficult to say this is how it should be and this is what's going to be, because I think there's very nuanced, as I was just saying about that example where they were putting the humans back in, to try and sort of unblock their bottleneck. And so it's kind of like, where is human judgment important? And then I think the next one is like team capability. It's like, what capabilities do we actually, if we're redesigning the process and we're rethinking where the humans fit, do we have the right capability to do this? And what capability are we going to need? And, how does that work? And then the next part of it is the data and measurement part of it. And there's kind of 2 bits to this. I think in the large organizations, there's a bit, I've done a couple of really interesting interviews with people who kind of run recruiting operations, recruiting technology operations, about how they are trying to centralize and standardize data across the whole of HR to really get some benefits of AI. But then I think from a, in a kind of a more, more granular perspective, there's also, what are we going to measure to know that AI is providing us value? And, really kind of getting into, the measurements around it. So you can kind of see what's going on. And then the last one is about governance and trust. And the governance is obviously understanding the regulations that are out there, the laws that are applicable to this, the ethics around it, which is a massive area, and something that is probably only going to get more complicated. But I would also highlight the trust part of this, because
explain that.
So I think one of the things that I've noticed is the companies that I've talked to who have implemented some of these AI processes, or who are doing AI interviews, they're always reporting that actually the candidates loved it. The candidates loved the transparency, the speed, all this kind of stuff.
I've heard both. I mean, I've heard love, and I've heard also get rid of it.
But absolutely. But then the flip side of it, I think whenever it's being sort of discussed, it's always very negative. It's like, I applied for 10 jobs, I got rejected by an AI. There's a lot of kind of negative sentiment towards it. So there is a huge job, I think, to do to build trust with candidates that actually, do you know what, this is going to be a fairer, more transparent, and better experience for you.
What's your first, in your opinion, what's your first step in establishing that trust? I have an idea on what I do, but I want to hear from you, from the expert. What is that first step to get that, to repair it and or build it?
Yeah, I think the first step is to be really honest about where and how AI is being used in the process, because I've seen companies do that. I see they've almost given like, here's our AI charter. This is how we are going to use it, and this is why we are using it, and just kind of really explaining what's happening. I think that to me is a first step.
So for me, it's disclosing. It's being transparent about it. And I think that's where a lot of times the tools, systems, trust starts to erode. People start developing mistrust. I guess being transparent, but also explainability. So that's maybe 2 sides of the same coin. If you're going to be transparent, it must be explainable. If you're transparent about some obscure black box thing, that's going to backfire.
Agreed. Yeah.
So we're disclosing that we use AI, and then people are like, "Oh no, what does that mean?" Right? So if you're going to say that, if you're going to disclose that, then say, we use AI too, and why, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. I think that's
I
really
think that's the
important,
big
and
step.
also making sure you're using tools that you can actually do that with is
Well, yeah, right.
key
If you,
is
then
key as well.
don't freaking use them if you can't do that. But that's what I
Yeah,
think. So
yeah.
I've had some, I do write messages that are personalized using AI, and it is a writing assistant. It is exactly what it is. The way I see it is there must be no better use for large language models than to collate large chunks of language and help me with language, because that's what
Mm,
they're built for. So everything else aside, in my opinion, using generative AI as a aid for brainstorming and cleaning up writing, as long as you're not asking it to write for you, which creates slop. So
yeah,
I use personalization, but I've got, here's the resume, here's what I want to say, here's what I usually say it, help me put these, find the Venn diagram, converge these circles,
yeah.
what they do, what I say, what I want, and
Mm,
then
mm,
it helps me target. Manually, I would have done that, but it would take too long.
yeah,
So I do occasionally get replies from people that say, is this an automated message? And I will reply back to them manually and say, well, yes, the message was sent through an automated system, but I wrote the message and I'm responding to it myself. It's like,
yeah,
I can't manually send 100 emails a day. So I'm using a tool to help me send emails. The explanation is much like it used to be. You hand licked every envelope, hand wrote it, put a stamp on it, and walked it to the mailbox. I can't do that now. So
yeah.
I have a laser printer, print labels, and I have a postage stamp printer that prints postage, and then somebody comes and picks it up. It's I need a tool to be able to help my much like, yes, I used to walk to the grocery store, but now I use a car. Or
Yeah, no,
I used to
absolutely.
drive
Yeah.
my car, and now the car drives itself. That's all it is.
And I think it's interesting as well because in some ways, it's almost like the industry's not being honest with people, which is okay. The choice is you can receive a reply from us, which maybe
Maybe
AI
processed by AI.
generated, or not hear back from
Or
us
not.
at all,
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
It's the choice. And I
That's right.
think sometimes this gets conflated as so. I can either talk to a human or I can talk to an AI. It's like, well, actually, you can talk to an AI or probably just not hear
Or just
anything.
not talk to anybody.
And
Yeah,
I think that's the bit that doesn't really, that doesn't really get talked about because that's what the choice is with the volumes and everything that kind of everything goes on the way that recruiting's changed. And I think that's the kind of the honest conversation. But people
So
aren't really going to say that very often. But yeah,
okay, yeah. I want to. There was a. I want to ask a follow up on something that I just wrote about that relates to this. But before I do that, I want to continue on the thread that I was going. You keep finding the same cognitive dissonance when you talk to people, based on what I've heard and read about you in your writings. Not that I'm like stalking you or anything. Maybe I am, but a little bit. Just. But from what I've read, you keep finding the same kind of. People believe in TA that AI is going to change everything, but except it's not going to change their job.
yeah,
What's that?
yeah.
What is the disconnect there?
I mean, I've seen it.
Why is that happening?
It's big. It's really interesting. I mean, I was in a room about 2 years ago at an event where Gen AI was starting to kind of make an impact, and we did kind of a poll at the front, and it was like, who thinks that, and it was an executive recruitment event. It was like, who thinks that Gen AI is going to fundamentally change executive recruitment? And something like 80% of the room said yes. And the next question was, will it change the way that you do your job? And 80% of the room said no. And it was like, really? How does that happen? And I think there's just lots of human things going on here about what people like to do in their job, what they think they're good at, versus what they potentially are good at and what a machine's better at. So I think that there's a lot of kind of fear. There isn't much sort of safety around this. It's very difficult to actually say, do you know what? This part of my job is probably better done by a machine, because I think people feel that then they're just going to lose their, they lose their job. They're not going to be assigned to a higher value
Di-
task. It's
right,
gonna
right,
be, and I
right.
think
Your job might
that
change.
yeah, and I think
You
that's
know,
that is just a symptom of the kind of the economy that we're in and everything that's kind of happening. So I think there's a big bit of fear around it, and also I also think that because this moves so quickly, people don't have the time or the bandwidth to really understand what's possible and what's happening and what's changed since last month. And unfortunately, if you're using LinkedIn as your source of truth on this, there's just so much nonsense and noise that it's just really difficult to kind of really understand what's going on, what's possible, how quickly things are changing. And I think that's a part of it. That's a part of it as well.
so okay. Now let me. Yeah, I think that's a good answer. It's hard to explain uh, the fear. It's almost like it's a fear of change or a resistance of change. I don't know if courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is what you do in the presence of fear. And so
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a fear response and then say everybody in TA is a coward, because that's
Mm.
what would come across if I did that. And that's not what I'm saying. But it seems to be like there's the same thing happened with the internet. The same
Yeah, I
thing
was
happened
about
with
to say
social
that.
media,
Yeah.
right? There was
Yeah.
this adoption, and then rejection response, and then this, at first it was welcome, and then it was like fear. I think humans just go through that. It probably happened with the wheel, and probably happened with fire. It probably never happened with recruiter, because at some point somebody said, hey, that person's really talented, I bet I can make money selling them. And from then on it became a profession for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But I think it's a human nature to do that, to be suspicious about it. The concern is that it's going to eliminate our job, meaning that we will then become unemployed. But the internet didn't really do that. For example, before I get a bunch of hate mail from my 2 listeners, when the internet came around, one of the biggest cries that you heard in the nascent stages was that it was going to eliminate travel agents. Well,
Yes.
there are still travel agents. Now, there are
Yeah.
not anywhere as many. What was eliminated was the need for a travel agent to sell you an airplane ticket, which was literally an online transaction nowadays. So it eliminated that. But the value of the travel agent wasn't the ability to buy a ticket. It was planning, putting it together, making recommendations, having been there, having discounts and specials that So sure, there's a lot fewer travel agents because of the internet. Another one would be print. It's going to eliminate printers. Well, it did hurt the industry a lot by centralizing it and making printing less necessary, because you don't have to send mail anymore, et cetera, et cetera. But there are still printers. So all these things that the internet was going to eliminate completely, I can't think of an example. There probably is one, but I can't think of an example that was wiped out. Now, if you said, well, there are examples like, well, we no longer ride horses to work. Okay, but we still have horses.
Yeah,
We don't
exactly.
use
Well,
them to
yeah, people still
transport.
ride horses, don't they? Yeah,
Right. We
exactly.
still ride horses. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing, right? So your job's not going to be eliminated. The things that you're doing might be automated, but your job should become something different. The person
Absolutely.
who used to drive, you know what driving meant? That meant leading cattle and leading horses.
Yeah.
That driver
Yeah.
is now driving a truck. So if they're not going to be driving a truck by being in the seat because the truck drives itself, they'll be the ones that operate the trucks and supervise them, and maybe they drive 10 trucks at a time. I don't know. I'm making that up, but
Yeah, no,
the
I
point
think
is your
I
job
think it's a good
changes.
point. Yeah, it does. I think the other thing that I'd pull from the internet kind
Yeah.
of period as well, because I kind of remember it well. So there was a bit about the internet's going to change recruiting, all this sort of
Mhm.
stuff, and there came a point that if you worked in TA, you couldn't admit that you didn't understand it, basically. So there was a point where, oh yeah, no, yeah, of course the internet's going to do this, it's going to do this, and I used to talk to a lot of people who I really thought they don't really understand this, but they don't feel they're in a position now to ask about it because everyone gets it. And I think we're seeing that magnify about 1 million times with AI, because I think people are a little bit like, I don't feel comfortable saying I don't really understand what's going on or how this is going to work.
That's
And
okay. Yeah.
and I think with
It's okay to
this,
ask too.
yeah, it's because this is moving so quickly. No one does. No one understands what's going on or how it's going to work.
It's okay to ask. There's nothing wrong with
And
that.
I think that's the thing. And I think it's, it kind of does reach that stage where people feel they just can't, they can't say they don't know anything about it because, that's because everyone does. And I've noticed that happening with AI in the same way it happened with the internet.
Got it. And now the example, and now for a brief commercial break. No, I'm just kidding. The example is I had one of the members of my community. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, this probably is actually a really good time for a self-promotion. If you're curious about when I talk about my community, TSI University, that is what I do for a living. Is I help recruiters build their full life cycle process and automation, and we teach people how to do that on our community. So check out tsiuniversity.com. But one of my members asked a question. They said, we now purchased a AI screening tool, and we were told that we need to maximize our use of it. And so far, it was purchased to do screening of what you were talking about before. And she asked the question, how else could we leverage this as a tool? Like, this is now, we now are paying for this tool. Are there other things that it can do that, that we can take advantage of, right? So I actually, I'm going to publish this on LinkedIn later, and I wrote a pretty lengthy response because at first I was like, oh yeah, let me give you some ideas. And I started going on all the different things that I've done in the past. And then it occurred to me, this is more than just a response to a question. This is a full-on blog post. So let me ask you, and I'm happy to share some of the things I mentioned.
Sure.
Let me ask you, if you just bought an AI screening tool and you want to use it for more than just inserting it into the beginning of the process of screening. So assuming that this is your workflow, someone applies, a recruiter reviews their resume or the AI screening, whatever, and then that person is then selected to move forward. And the first move forward step is to talk to an AI for a preliminary, phone conversation. That's what they bought it for. If you have it for that and you're paying for it and you have unlimited use, what else would you do with it? I had some.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the things to look at, and again, it depends on the size of the organization, but I've seen people use those kind of tools for intake meetings with hiring managers.
Yep.
To be able to standardize the information, and which is that's an interesting, that's definitely an interesting kind of use case. I guess it depends what it does. I mean,
it's a conversational AI, right?
Yeah. I think one of the other interesting things I've seen actually was, and this came from an AI company that does voice cloning, but they cloned the voice of their recruiters. So the recruiters were still doing recruitment in a very human way, but as a candidate, you could talk to their kind of automated version and just ask lots of questions before your interview. So tell me about it. What about this? What about this? What about this? So by the time you get to the interview, you have all that information. You're really well informed. So, I think, allowing people to find out more information, have conversations, those kind of things. I think that's that's another one that I would think of.
Well, starting with the premise that just to be clear, starting with the premise that this is a very well-developed technology. I don't know which one it is that they asked me about.
Yeah.
So we know that so let's assume that this is a well-done conversational AI, and it knows when to exit. It knows to bring in a human. It's not a stupid chatbot, right? So let's assume that. Then let's assume that you have people that you could approach with the very same clarity that you stated before, which is you have the choice. You can either talk to our robot or not talk to us. So what we're not offering you the option of talk to a human or talk to AI. We're saying we have this AI we'd like to use to connect with you. You can either connect with us or not connect with us. That's fine. If you don't want to connect with us, then there's, we have another process for that. But this is that. So starting with those two assumptions, it's good and it does what it's supposed to. And you're saying either, opt in or opt out, but not like, whatever, get human. I think we should also use it for things like going back 5 years and re-engaging all of our silver medalists.
Absolutely.
get the conversation going. Hey, a few years ago, you applied for a job, you interviewed, and someone else was hired. We'd love to reconnect. Are you still available? What are you doing? Bring us up to speed. And this conversation is with an AI. We're recording it, and we'll transfer these notes to a recruiter, and so a recruiter can see your updated file.
Yeah.
But feel free to ask any questions, etc., something like that, right? So that's one idea. But then I also thought, you could use this for internal mobility. There's nothing that said, there's no rule that says that it must be for applicants. You can use this for interviewing talent internally, where they could opt in to have a conversation with the AI to build a career profile.
Yeah,
so that they're, because one of the things that with internal mobility that I have run into constantly, at least for the last 7 or 8 years, is that the biggest challenge with internal sourcing is that we don't know what they do. If our internal employees don't have an application on file because the ATS came in after they were hired, or they never applied for a job with us, they were already here, we don't know who they are. And so we have no way of matching talent. And LinkedIn doesn't really do a good job of doing that. So the AI could be a way to.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is,
what do you think?
we don't know who they, we don't know what they've done in the past.
Right.
But the point that you probably have the most information on that person is when they were recruited. And the recruiter probably has a lot of context on, and they did this before, but that's not quite relevant for this. So it's not going to go on to any kind of thing. And I think, I've just seen people so frustrated over the years not being moved around in companies because people are making assumptions that they can't do something. You should know this. So I think that's a great, just that kind of filling in information use case, just doing things at scale. I think that's great.
What about referrals?
And this is where it's getting out of the mindset of.
What about referrals? What about everybody who says, everybody who gives you a referral? Like, recruiters want referrals, but the downside to that is that when we are given a referral that is very clearly not somebody that we're going to hire because they're not in this, they don't do what our business does, then the recruiters are like, oh man, I got to call this person because they're the cousin of the nephew of the, of somebody that went to college with our CEO, and it's a waste of time. We're never going to hire, whatever. But AI can give that person the option of being interviewed very transparently and say, hey, we don't really know. You were referred to us, but we don't know anything about you. Tell us your story. What can you?
Exactly.
Recruiters might discover the person actually does have some qualifications that they didn't know about because the referrer just said, hey, this person would be great for sales, but they didn't really tell the story. So
exactly. Why? And they just look at their resume and go, really? I can't see that.
Right. Except, but the AI can
but then the AI can. I think that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about it's removing the restrictions. It's just like, you don't have to think about this as like, it's a recruiting process anymore. It's like this can do this kind of stuff. It can have conversations with people. It can go and get information, and it can do it in a way that doesn't annoy people as well. It's just
exactly. It's an opt-in. Hey, would you you were referred to us. You could either talk to this AI or not.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Bye. That's it. Whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think it's ironic as well, because I think a lot of people, a lot of job seekers, they'll apply for jobs and they're just like, well, you know what? If I could just have that conversation with the recruiter to give them the context of everything that I've done, then it would be great. And that doesn't happen in the process that we have. And the ironic thing is, an AI-enabled process would allow that to happen, but people are against that because they think it moves them away from talking to a human. And I think that's the disconnect that it's just gets to somehow break down, basically.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you've made me feel better. I validated that. I have a bunch of other ideas, but I'm going to probably just save those for later and write them up. I wanted to ask about the LLM, the Gen AI job search shift. And I have a call later on today with somebody that founded, started a company where they are helping people. It's like SEO for ChatGPT.
Right.
So they're helping candidates stand out in ChatGPT. But let's talk about the other side of that. Candidates using not just ChatGPT, but Gemini or Copilot or whatever, instead of job boards. Is that really happening? And how does that work? Because as far as I know, they're using like large language models are looking at data that's kind of old. It's not real-time data.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's kind of a number of things going on with this. So there are
Yeah.
companies who are building apps within LLMs for employers. Some of the job boards have some kind of like feeds in there. There's kind of
Okay.
there's an emerging sort of field of getting that information in.
So people really truly are looking for, they're going to ChatGPT and saying, I need a job, and they're getting a job.
Yeah, I think, but it's a different type of search. So rather than, you go to a job board, I'm looking for this kind of job. You even go to
Right.
Google
Okay.
jobs in marketing in New York City or whatever it is. But with the LLMs, it's like, do you know what? I want to do this with my career. What do we think? What kind of jobs are out? It's a much more conversational, more in-depth sort of, conversation, more in-depth conversational. It, it's a different type of search, and there's a huge amount of I think it's really powerful because I think candidates who come in through that route, if you can connect them to your job somehow through some type of optimization or whatever it is, you're getting much more high intent candidates through. You're getting people who actually have done their research, have found out actually, this could be the job for me, and this is the right location because I found out that it's I can get there this way or whatever, and I think that's really interesting. Definitely. Now, as you say, the mechanics of it, how does it all join up? How do they get to the jobs? How do they get to the data? I think that's just
Yeah,
been
I'm
that's
starting to
been
peel
worked
the
out.
onion.
That's been worked out at the minute, but it
Okay.
will be. It will be
Okay.
because I think that the value of candidates who come through that kind of route could be
It
very
makes sense because
Mm.
I've always talked about how, well, not always, but ever since like Google really became prominent as a search engine, how the number one way that people find your jobs is through Google. It just happens to be that Google sends them to your job board. Um, and so shift that to Google's no longer, which nowadays it's becoming much more an AI itself, where like you go and try to search on Google and it gives you an AI answer, and then you can go back to search or keep on the AI. So obviously, I
Yeah.
get that. Like I'm going to go to Google to look for a job. It's going to become an AI. I'm going to ask the AI to help for. So I get that. What I'm just curious about is how do we get the jobs in there in a way that is real time? Because that's the thing. If you go
Yeah.
to a job board, the old fashioned job board, even LinkedIn, I can show you right now. I can show you a hack where I can tell you the jobs that have been posted in the last 5 minutes.
Mm.
I know how to do
Mm.
that. And
Yeah.
so is a chatbot really going to be getting those jobs? I mean, that would mean that it would have to be scanning LinkedIn job posts every 5 minutes. I just don't see that. How is it getting to that content?
I think that's the thing, and it's kind of I've seen a number of different sort of models emerging of actually
Okay.
people building things in LLMs using their kind of connectors and their apps and all that sort of stuff
So this
for
could happen.
employers to
Okay.
feed jobs in. So it's not going to be an automatic thing. There has to be some kind of bridge within
Right.
that. And also, I think that's really interesting in terms of what that looks like and who owns that. Are the job boards going to step up and do that?
Wow.
Is someone going to enable the employers to do that? Is
I
it
guess so.
what's going to
I don't
happen?
know. That's
I
a good
mean,
point.
that's interesting. It's a bit like
Some vendor will probably create a way to sell you that, but
yeah,
with Google, it used to be it wasn't really the employer; it was the job board that was putting the content
yeah,
on Google, and
yeah,
now there's tools that distribute they call programmatic advertising that distribute
yeah.
your postings in a smart way where they track results and then they optimize where it's working, where it's not. There's probably something similar to that possible with these chatbots.
And
It's just the shift of the
yeah,
mindset,
it's funny. I was having a conversation with a company that actually does this, that helps employers get the jobs in, and they were comparing it to Google, and they were talking about a difference in incentive. So from
Okay.
Google's perspective, Google sells advertising.
Yep.
So
Well, used to.
it wants to kind of come up with lots of listings, but
Mhm.
actually at the kind of consumer level, all these LLMs sell subscriptions.
Right.
So they want to keep people kind of on there asking questions. So it's a very different kind of almost starting game, and it will be interesting to see how that sort of shapes the way that things end up, because this is not just the case of running a job feed as adverts into an LLM, because that's not
I mean,
how they work or what they look like. So
I've been around long enough to know that I can definitely answer this with absolute certainty and clarity. When I go to Google and I ask a question and I get a bunch of bullshit, I'm okay with that because I didn't pay for it. If I went to a
Yeah.
place where I paid for data and I got bullshit, I'd be pissed.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And also it's just, I think the amount of information that you can get on candidates could be interesting as well, because, someone's going to go to an LLM, they'll put their resume in, or what if they've still got a resume, whatever it is, and say, do you know what should I do next in my career? This is what I've done. What can I do? People are using them as like, advisors and, consultants and all of that sort of stuff. So it's, it's going to be interesting to see.
A little bit like
how it
asking a
comes out.
mechanic what you should do with your car.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you all the things that you can do to spend money on me doing something for your car. Like,
but also then there's that whole thing about trust. It's like, well, actually,
right.
if I'm, as you say, if I'm paying for an LLM and I'm asking it stuff and it's just serving me very thinly disguised adverts, then I'm not interested. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how it all pans out. I mean, I don't know the answer, but it's going to be interesting to watch, definitely.
So we've been beating up your, podcast on the technology and everything like that, but you actually have another business. You have another business that is where you consult and provide, answers and advice to big Fortune 100 companies and talk about, what strategy and TA leaders should be doing. Based on your conversations with clients, not naming any names, but just generally what you've been learning, what does the TA leader look like who's actually truly ahead of the curve? Like, I'm not saying who, as in give me a name. Like,
I understand.
What does the profile of a TA leader look like who's ahead of the curve versus the ones that think they are, but are actually getting left behind?
So I actually kind of looked at, again, the podcast stage and conversations I have, and there's kind of a model around this. There's 4 areas basically.
Oh,
so the first one is
that's awesome.
The first one is foresight. So it's kind of like, it's not necessarily about predicting the future, but it's like understanding what the future could look like, but also having a vision for the future and working towards that. So I think that's kind of important. It's almost like the future's not going to look like what my team does and looks like now. So let's own that. Let's take that forward. So I think that's the first one.
What if
the second one is
sixth sight though? Because foresight, we have 4 senses. Now we have 6 senses, so it would be sixth sight, not foresight.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's 4 as in FOR.
I know. I'm just,
So
I think a good pun is its own reward.
I know. I was going to start talking Latin to you then.
Okay, so foresight is 1. You said there's 4. What are the others?
The second one is influence. So that's influence within the business. Internally. But really influence with the stakeholders who can provide resources and budget and buy-in to do this. So the people who are really good at this are the ones who know how to go and get the budget to support it and the buy-in to support it. The third one is talent, because that's what we do. And I think it's the ability to think differently about how they'll get talent into their business. So that could be, okay, do we need to think about actually how we assess different types of skills to fill these kind of roles? It's just a much more sort of, thinking with much more agility about the talent side, solving the talent problems of the business. And then the last one is technology, which is understanding how technology can help them do the other 3 areas. So it's not, as you said, about buying technology for the sake of it and saying,
but being aware of it.
It's actually understanding how technology can drive their strategy and what they need to do around that. So it's really those 4. It's really those 4 areas that really stand out.
Can they miss one and still make it, or are these 4 legs of a chair that
I think they are 4 legs of a chair, to be honest with you. I think you can get so far with with
a 3-legged stool.
Yeah, you can get so far, but you're not really gonna it's not going to sustain you over time. And because I've built an actual assessment that people can do to get their scores around this, and when I look at the people who get the biggest scores, they're split across all 4 areas. It's not just that they're scoring huge in one area and less in another. It's across all of them consistently.
And technology doesn't mean they have to be a technologist, I think. I don't know if I'm putting ideas into your head here, but like to me, technology just means that either, if you know it, great, you understand it. But one of my leader at my company now where I work, is aware of technology. But if I was to show him like a piece of code that I wrote, that conversation would not go very far.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. It's like it's not necessarily understanding how it works. It's understanding what it makes possible
and who to ask, and like have somebody that you can go to. Yeah, I think that's important.
Risks might be, all those kind of things. So it's very much that. It's very much that level. And I think that one of the issues that I think we've had over the last sort of couple of years with AI is all the kind of commentary and narrative tends to dive into the minutiae of, it works like this and everyone needs to be a prompt engineer and whatever, and less about, well, actually, what does this make possible and how do we make that possible? So yeah, completely agree.
I want to try something that I don't get to try often with guests, because they're, a lot of times people feel like they need to prepare a little bit for this because it's live. This is totally unscripted. But you've got so many episodes under you that I think that this actually would be okay. I want to do 5 hot takes. So give me your quick, no hedging, honest, snap answer on these 5 quick things, and then we'll try to wrap things up because we're getting close to the top of the hour here. So you ready?
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Just whatever comes to mind. You don't need to hedge it. Resume screening in 3 years. Does it exist?
No.
Okay. The ATS, dead, alive, or zombie?
Zombie.
Zombie. Yep. In my head. All right. One AI tool category that's actually delivering real ROI now.
AI interviewing.
Okay. AI screening.
AI screening.
Interview. Okay.
Yeah.
Biggest vendor lie, not the vendor, but the lie in the TA tech market.
We can explain how AI works.
Ooh, they can. They just don't want to tell you. Okay.
Yeah, or they don't know.
This is great. I love this. Last one. What is the skill every recruiter needs to develop? Every recruiter needs to develop in the next 18 months.
I can't think of a word for this, but it's flexible thinking. It's the ability to kind of question what you've always done and kind of sort of move on, or the ability to think, everything is like this one day and it's completely different the next day, and that's okay. So it's that level of flexibility, I think.
I think it's critical thinking.
It's kind of critical thinking. It's more sort of adaptive, flexibility, adaptive thinking. Yeah, there's lots of words for it, but I think
I get it. No, I totally get it. Yeah, it's like one of those things that's really hard to put your finger on, like common sense, which is not very common.
Yeah, I mean, I used to say during the .com era, I used to describe it as because I was building a team back then to do to build websites in recruitment and stuff like that, and we always used to say that we were really good at believing something was 100% true on Tuesday and then changing our minds about it on Wednesday because the world had moved on, and that was okay. Basically, we weren't like we were wrong. Yes, it was like, no, that's fine. It's not, now it's no longer true. So it's that ability to kind of sort of move forward, but while still kind of being genuine, not just flip-flopping around, if that makes sense.
Oh, somebody from the gallery said that they have a programmatic vendor that just released a partnership with GPT for exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah, there's a few out there. It's starting to happen.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, folks, you know how to find Matt and join the Recruiting Future community. Follow him. Normally, I ask my guests to drop a name of someone that they want me to recruit as a guest on the show. But with 800 episodes, you probably have a long list. So I'm going to leave this one up to you and just say, if there's anybody that you've spoken with on your show or in the future that you speak with, that would be a good fit for my show, now that you know the format, I'd love to get some intros, and I'm always looking for guests. I've got a long list, but I'm always looking for people that are willing to take the chance on the live and the raw feel of this. So if you know anyone,
of course,
drop me a name.
I will.
Until then, any parting words of wisdom for us to mull over the weekend here? before you wrap up?
I would just say to people, don't get FOMO. Don't worry about this stuff. No one really knows how it's going to work out and what they're doing. Even the people building this technology don't know what's going to happen.
That's actually pretty true.
Yeah. It's just like, take a step back, look at what you're doing, think about the best strategy for your business.
That's awesome. That's so true. I think some of the founders that used to be talking about the big ones like Sam Altman and whatnot. Oh, AI is going to take all your jobs. Now they're like, we're going to take that back.
I take that back. Exactly.
Yeah. So they definitely don't know what they're talking about.
It's kind of comforting and also terrifying at the same time. So that's the thing. But yeah.
Comfort, terrifying. That's kind of like a new word that I invented today. Yeah. Sangry. Sad and angry.
Yeah, very well.
Comforting and terrifying. Comfortifying. No. I'll have to think of something. Thank you very much for being a guest and being so graceful. This has been great. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help your show and collaborate. Until our next episode, folks, be kind to yourselves. You can always find me on Shally's Alley and tsiuniversity.com. And you can find Matt at the address that I shared, and also MetaShift. Is it MetaShift?
Recruitingfutures.com.
Recruitingfutures.com. Okay.
Podcast, yeah.
Recruiting Futures. That's easier to remember.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matt. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.